today we are continuing with part 2 of the history of Christian Spanik. Hello, Chris. Nice to meet you again.
Hello, Jörg. Thanks for
So,
having me on the show.
no problem. Thanks for coming again. So, today we are talking about how you came to television after the last time you spoke about how you came to computers and how you became a book writer and even coding a bit since Hannes didn't support you for your first Amiga book.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing was, everything started with writing. So the whole time I was born as a writer somehow. I'm a guy who is writing all the time. So I never thought about TV at all. But what happens then was a funny thing. It was a situation when we did our first Amiga books. We had a situation that the German Handelsblatt, I told you about it last time, German Handelsblatt did a big article about this kind of writing and said this is a way of writing people really love. And we think it's very motivating for people reading books like that. And we think, Handelsblatt quoting, we think every computer book should be written like that. Okay, great thing. Because of that article, a guy from ZDF, which is a big German news TV station, found my name and then he called me up and said, hey, you are the guy who writing the technic books about computers and you're writing this in a special way. And I read it and I really liked it. So you ever thought about writing for TV? And the guy was Klaus Möller. He's unfortunately I think he died last year. But he did at that time a TV show, which was called Technik 2000. Okay. It was a TV show for young people about technology at all, not about computers, especially about technology at all. It was about energy, making energy, about ICE or trains, about everything you can imagine which was Technik. And they were searching for a writer who has ideas of making this more popular in the writing and means in the show. And so Klaus called me up and we had some discussions and after a while he said, okay, would you mind trying to make a script for the show? And my problem was I never have written a script for a TV show, so I had no idea how this should look like. Is it written like a book? Is it written like I don't know. I had no idea. So the only
like
thing
the
I knew.
Movie script you had in mind when you first brought your idea about a little animation on the Commodore 64. Maybe it's similar to that.
Right. That was the first thing I thought about. So the funny thing was, I bought in the United States several manuscripts from big movies like Amadeus or Jurassic Park or things like that, because I really liked movies and I really always thought about being a movie writer. So I was looking at those scripts and thought perhaps it should look like that, but I couldn't imagine. I had no idea. So I thought when I now go to Klaus and say, can you send me a script because I have no idea how to write this? He will say, okay, perhaps he's not the right guy. So I said to him, could you send me some scripts that I get a feeling of how you wrote it up to now so I can decide if I can do something different? And he said, oh, sure, I can send you some scripts from the old shows and you can have a look at it. And so I did two things at once. First, I found out what they really did before. And second, I found out how it should look like. And so I thought about writing for the show. And I started with thinking about ideas. And so I gave Klaus a call and I said, the whole show is most of the time in the studio. And I think Technik is somewhere outside. It's not inside. So why don't we go with a show outside of the studio? Go there where Technic is. Go to a train station. Go to a coal mine, yeah, something like that. And so he said, this is a great idea, but I don't know if the host of the show, which was Biggie Lechterman, and I don't know if my chief really liked that idea. So perhaps the best thing is you meet both and talk to them about this idea. So that's what I did. I went to Mainz, to ZDF, to a guy, Markus Schächter is his name. He later was the intendant of ZDF, but in that time he was the head of children and youth program. And I talked to him about the show, and he gave me a theme about the show, about it, what should it be, what was the content of the show. And the funny thing was, I told him some ideas what we can perhaps do with it. And so then I met the host of the show, Biggie Lechterman. She told me about another show with another topic. So I thought, okay. And I gave her also some ideas for the other topic. What can we do if we are outside, not in the studio? And Klaus talked to me also about a third show, different topic. And I gave him also some ideas what we can do in the show when we are outside and not in the studio. And the funny thing is, I started with making one show, but in the end, everybody wanted that I do the show with the topic he had in mind. And so suddenly I was standing there and was the author of 3 shows of Technik 2000 with different topics and different things. And so I started writing for TV.
Okay. Well, when I was talking to friends of mine, and they said that a lot of people probably watched Biggie Lechterman because of her looks and not because of the contents of the show.
You know what? The problem is always with women as a host of a show. Everybody talks about how they look like. Normally, you don't do that on guys. So
except George Clooney.
Yeah, okay. I mean, there are some exceptions, but most of the time, it's not never somebody talked to me about how I look when I did Neues or when I did all the other shows where I was in front of the camera. I mean, that time I was just a writer. I was not in front of the camera. I was just a writer. But nobody ever asked me about how I look. I mean, sure, we had the guys from the makeup department and things like that, but it was normal. But it was not to look nicer than you are in reality. And the only funny thing is all the time, and I worked with a lot of hosts of shows during the last 30 years, it's always the same. If it's a woman, everybody's talking about how she's looking and how she acts in front of the camera. I think that's not fair. I think that's very unfair, because the question is, does somebody have an idea about what he's talking about? But I'm with you. I know that Biggie had a lot of fans, especially because he was a nice young woman, was talking about technology, had a nice way of talking to people, making talks. So I think perhaps it was in the beginning for a lot of people. I watched the show because of Biggie, because she's so cute. But after a while, I think people started to watch the show because of the content.
Good answer. Well, I mean, when I was watching computer shows like Computer Chronicles, it always kind of appeared to me that a lot of spokeswomen that represented companies in the studio were actually an attractive woman in a suit. For example, Microsoft had his press department woman, or Apple at that time. I mean, we are talking here about the 70s, 80s, so it's a bit like I don't know if that is a kind of a planned thing, you know, like a coup, you know, better impression in television, at least in America. I mean, I was too young to remember how it was at the beginning of the 80s in Germany, so.
I mean, you're somehow right. I mean, if you're a host of the show, you always have to be somehow polite. You always have to have you will always have to give the people the feeling that you really want to be here and you want to be their guest in their home when they're watching at a TV set. So it has something to do with empathy, with sympathy. So you have no chance being a host of a TV show most of the time. I mean, even there are some exceptions, but normally you have no chance. So I think if you have a good-looking guy or a good-looking woman, it will always make things easier in the beginning, but not in the long run. In the long run, the only thing which works is that you have an idea of what you're talking about, that people trust in the things you're saying, that people understand what you're saying. So it's more important what you're saying than what you're looking like. But still, it's in the beginning, in the first few moments, or perhaps in the first few shows, it's important if you're a sympathetic person, if people want to have you in their home, because you never have to forget that being on a TV always means I'm in your living room. I mean, you start the TV set and you see me, and I'm a part of your evening. I take your time. So I think it's important to be sympathetic. It's important to have empathy for the people and to take your audience really honest. And if you do that, I think the rest will simply start working. And after a while, nobody thinks, oh, look, he has now new wrinkles, makeup is not so good this time. I think after a while, people don't think about that. But the funny thing, you say we're talking about the 70s and 80s. Look, I have something for you and for your viewers. You see that? That is
a Walkman.
Good old stuff. This is the way we listen music in that time, in the days, when we don't have an MP3 player. It was a Sony Sports Walkman where you can put cassettes in and you can run around with it and hear music. And this was a way of going to the world, to the internet. It was a acoustic coupler. You put your telephone on this thing and then on those both sides, and then you can connect to the world. And especially because we are also sometimes talking about the Amiga, these are the giveaways from Commodore that day for the Amiga fans. It's a Concorde. Nice. Now we don't have the Concorde anymore, and we don't have the Amiga anymore. So these are things which were our history in that time. So I think even what you just said about the picture of man and woman, especially on Technic shows, changed a lot since all the rest of the things also changed a lot.
That acoustic coupling device that you just showed was actually a mobile version because it had a strap around it, so you could put it on phone cells, for example, so it wouldn't fall off.
Right. I mean, it was a strip you have to just make it around the headset of the telephone. I think I have to search, but I think I have even some old parts of a movie where you see how I used the whole thing for a TV show. So I will search for that for my next show. If I find on Christian guckt sich if I will find that piece of video and show it how it worked that days. But nevertheless, times have changed. So if you watch at tech shows nowadays, like how's it called, This Week in Tech or things like that, you see also women and men, and both are talking about technology, and both sides have their viewers and have their fans. So I think this times, and I'm glad that it's like that, these times are over now.
Well, actually, I once did an interview with the Fractals, which were in America and before in UK and France, a group of women professional video game players. And actually, 2 years ago, Ubisoft stopped the project because they announced that now there is enough women in video gaming and computers that you don't need anymore a group of female professional gamers to improve the image of women in the IT world.
I understand that point. And I also think it's not the best idea that we have to make some rules or some special clubs or things like that women are playing a part in computers. And to be honest, if you look at our website at digisaurier.de, you will find a whole series about women in tech, women in computers. And there are quite a lot of women without their work. We will never would have things like the things we have now, because they did quite a lot on things like user interface, on basic technology. Just take Ada Lovelace or other ones which are in our series. Just watch out for that series. It's in German, but just look at digisaurier.de and search for computer and women in computers, and you will find quite a lot of women. And the funny thing, I think it started in the 60s or in the mid 60s that men were taking over this whole thing from women, because in the beginning, in the early days of computers, women were much more important on computer technology than men were.
I know, I read the article you're mentioning. I know about it. So my next question is, as you said, you were more in the background and you more wrote script for the computer shows. Did you have sometimes the problem that the presenter of the show was not really literate in computer, and you had to make the script so that he would appear more smarter than he actually is, you know?
Okay.
I mean, for example, Stuart Chaffee, who did Computer Chronicles, he was a nerd, you know, but not every journalist is a nerd and is in front of camera. Sometimes the people who know what's going on are behind the camera and write the scripts, like yourself.
The funny thing is, yes, you're right. I did several shows with hosts which are not the people who were really interested in computers that days. And what was, by the way, a normal behavior. Most of the people didn't have a lot of ideas of what the whole computer thing should be and about and to whom it may perhaps concern. Nobody had an idea, but it was an industry on the way. So a lot of TV stations I worked for wanted to do something with computers. And a good example is RTL. RTL that days did something like, it was called Fair TV. And we did some years, for example, on Cebit. We did regular shows every day, about 60 minutes, live shows about computer technology. And both hosts, both were men, by the way, both hosts didn't have any interest in computers. Never, ever.
Okay. Not even interest. Okay.
No, it was not their thing. They had, for example, one of them was Willy Knupp. He was interested in cars. He knew everything about cars. And the other one was a guy, perhaps you also know, it's Hans Meiser.
Of course, yeah.
And Hans was doing talk shows and the things like Notruf and things like that. So he was not a technical guy, and he never hid it. He never said, "Hey, I'm the guy. I want you to make me look smart." It was never. Nobody of all those hosts I had, some exceptions, but nobody from the hosts I would talk about ever tried to look smarter without knowing that they are not. So this is the first point I learned. A good host has not to be a freak or a nerd. That can be helpful. It's not always helpful, but it can be helpful. But if he's not a nerd, you will find that these guys have an idea of how to present things. And so, for example, Hans Meiser was one of the guys who always asked me, "Can you explain me that in words that I can understand?" So one of the questions was talking about hard drives that days. And the idea was how to explain to a normal audience, which are not also not nerds, how complicated it is and how difficult it is to build a hard drive, and why you have to be careful with hard drives that days. And so after a while, I found out that those guys who are not nerds, but were the host of the show, always were trying to find things they can understand. So I was starting to work for TV more like in the book business, in pictures. And so talking about the hard drive, I did a research on that and was talking to some people at IBM, and one of those, I said, can you explain me what is an idea of giving somebody the complexity of that technique? And he said, having a hard drive head and a magnetic surface running is and not crashing, so that it's so near that it's like flying a jumbo jet and in the light in the speed of sound.
Ultrasound.
But in 10 meters above the earth. So every little thing which is like that will be crash the whole system. So this is the picture you can give your audience how precise a hard drive has to be manufactured. Because if you're trying to fly a jumbo jet in 10 meters high, not 10,000, in 10 meters high, and the speed of the sound, you will find out it's impossible. So we have to build all those things so carefully that it works, because it's a comparison. It's not the reality, but it's a comparison for, in normal life, how complicated it is to have those things work. And I told that Hans Meiser. And so Hans Meiser said that on the show and said, we were now talking about hard drives, and if you think hard drives are boring because it's something in the computer, you should know how complicated it is to make one, because having a head of a hard drive and the surface of a hard drive running is like, and then he told the people a story. Everybody remembers that story. So what I learned in working with hosts who are not nerds is telling people stories in pictures. And this is I think later in the later years on the later shows was the secret of the success I had. Because on Technik 2000, on the show with Biggie Lechterman, I had real technique. I had a train, I had a coal mine, I had a lot of things which you can grab on, you can see, you see mechanical parts, so you can show people something. But on computers, you can't. So I think one of the big lessons I learned especially from the people who were no nerds but have to host a show about computers.
Well, we have to take into account back in the days computers were like gray boxes with stuff inside, not like a Raspberry Pi that is on a bare circuit board where you could see every part on it and even touch it without destroying it. Back in the day, it was like, if you do that, well, maybe you're lucky and it's still working, but most of the time it would probably cause some electrical discharge.
But even a Raspberry Pi, which looks more, it's something for a camera. It's only interesting if it makes things moving, but because you can't see bits and bytes running up and down and doing things. So even if you have a look inside the computer, you never see the miracle of the computer. And the idea in a TV show is about computers to make to make people understand the miracle in the computer inside, which you simply can't see. And I had a kind of moment when I realized that I was a regular guest at Universal Studios in Los Angeles. And every time I was there, I also did the studio tour, because they changed it all the time. I don't know if you know that. There's a studio tour, you go through Universal Studios, and they show you all the magic behind movie making, like King Kong and Jaws and all that stuff.
Yes, I was once in one for the boat. And you could actually go in the boat itself.
Right.
And so I know what you mean. Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
It's a little bit like Disney World or something like that, but it's about the movie business. And you meet really you are in a train and you see King Kong, and you go in one of the sound stages, and you see King Kong, a huge King Kong part who is wrestling on your car, and it's great. Everything was done by mechatronics, so it was moving parts, and there was that days a small part where they showed you some things like green boxing or blue boxing. Means if you have a blue or green background, and you bring people, for example, in a space. And so this was a part where you have a kind of stage where somebody showed you all that stuff, and somebody and you were an audience, had an audience part, and you can watch it, and they showed you the reality, and they showed you a TV screen where you can see the effect. So this was a small part. Most part that days were mechanical things. After 10 years, 15 years, more and more was virtual reality, was computer-generated graphics. For example, just take things like Jurassic Park. I mean, you can't make Jurassic Park in a kind of studios tour because all the dinosaurs were really computer animated. You could do King Kong because they built a King Kong, a mechanical King Kong. You could do Jaws because they put Jaws in the sea. It was a kind of plastic thing which came out of the sea and go through your train. But there was no way of making a dinosaur as living as it was in the movie. Why? In the movie it was a computer-generated thing.
Which was also done on Amigas, by the way, just to go back to Amigas.
Part of it, right.
Yeah.
So the most important thing is, after a while, they had more and more to do with, to deal with computer-animated stuff. And it was really interesting to see how the studios tour in Universal Studios over 15 years changed from mechatronics to the way of how we present animatics, how we present computer graphics, how do we present it to the people. And they find a way of doing it. It was also a part where I learned a lot of how make things visible which are not visible, and how explain the things to people which are not obvious, visible for the people. And Universal Studios is a good example for that.
So, but when you explain that, I wonder, isn't it more realistic if you have a mechatronic like, well, like monster that really rumbles on the wagon you are driving by in, then a computer
it's more fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun, definitely.
Yeah.
But what they did on the shows, for example, is they took some people of the audience, picked them out and say, who want to be a volunteer? And the people vanished somewhere in the background, and suddenly they were back riding on Furchur, the dragon, or riding with E.T. on a bicycle in the sky, things like that. So they found a way of doing it, and I think what you see is a lot of Universal Studios big movie hits now are not longer look behind the movies. They are more like Disney, where they're more rides. So there is a Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios, but there's not so much more like in the early days. It was just, we show you how we make movie magic. Now they give you an idea of, we give you some feeling, experience of the idea of the movie. How will it be meeting a dinosaur? And though they make rides like I don't know, roller coaster or things like that. So things have changed, and it's more fun having it real, but without all these animatics, without all these computer graphics. Forget the whole movie business. I mean, just try to make Matrix without computer graphics. It doesn't work.
Good point. Yeah. Oh, Avatar. They just announced today that there will before more movies of Avatar. So there will be Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said, it's just if you go to the set of Avatar, for most people it's simply boring because there's nothing to see. The magic starts later on in computer graphics. A funny story, by the way. When I was doing some research for a computer show in United States, I was at Hanna-Barbera. It was a big studio, you perhaps remember, for Yogi Bear and things like that. And those guys showed me their big computers. And I asked them, okay, so you do the drawing on the computer and then the computer animates the whole stuff? I said, oh, no. No. There are still drawers, people who are doing all the drawing. On a cartoon movie, it's quite a lot of drawing. But what we do with the computers is we do the filling with the color. What? Yeah, you know, in the old days of animatics, of cartoon comics, in TV, you always saw these little changes of the color during an animation sequence because everything was painted by hand, and if the color from one day was a little bit different to the next day, you could see that. So now we have a perfect color fill with the computers because it's every time the same thing. And I think so.
Now I understand why many movies said same things like now colored with Technicolor. That is actually why the credits changed of this 80s cartoons. They always said colored with Technicolor. That means colored on a computer. Was that
Technicolor? No. Technicolor was not a it was a brand of a special thing. So there was no. I don't know if there was ever a name for that kind of technique, but that's what they did, and I was really astonished because I thought you have. For a second of a cartoon movie, you have to do 25 or 24 drawings to make just a blink of the eye for Yogi Bear. So, or move him from a little bit. 1 second, 24 drawings. So I always thought those guys would make the drawing with the computer. No, they just did the color filling. And I think I asked the guy if there is any technique where you can do the drawing. I said, no, you will never can do the drawing of Yogi Bear on a computer.
And now they do it.
Now they do much more than that. So was a funny story. When I was first time on the movie sets in the United States, they were far away from any kind of things like computer animatics, things like that. The first movie I saw with computer animatics was Tron,
which was
where they had a real
yeah.
Disney. You remember that movie?
Yeah, sure. I was on the second one. Yeah, that was actually the movie with the biggest gap between the first and the second part.
Right.
Over 30 years. Between two parts of a movie.
I didn't like the second one. I really liked the first one because we were sitting in that movie in the movie theater. This was Hannes and me in Frankfurt. I remember the evening. We're sitting there. We're simply astonished about the graphics. The funny thing is now you laugh out loud if you see the graphics. Like, yeah, man, this is not great. But that days on a big movie theater screen, it was just incredible what these guys did. So I think computer animatics really, and Amiga was a big part of it, really moved forward, made things possible which we never thought will be possible.
So, final question about this topic. Do you think it's a pity that nowadays computer shows aren't on normal TV anymore, but move to the web?
No.
Or Twitch?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's a very, very good decision. I think next time when we are together, we perhaps will talk about the show I later did, and most people know me about it. Dreisat was Neues, because this was the big show we did. But that's for next time when we met. But when I when I started with Technic 2000, one part in Technic 2000 was Computer Corner. Klaus Möller did a little part about 10 minutes, and the whole show was 30 minutes, 20 minutes long, and Klaus did 5 minutes about computers, where he presented guys who are doing great stuff on computers, new computers and things like that. Then I started to write for DWR, another big station in Germany, where Wolfgang Back, who you had him on the show a few days ago. Wolfgang Back was the host, and there was one small show which was called High Score, which was that days a gaming magazine.
Oh, I know
and we
that
changed
too.
it.
That was also around when I was a little kid. I loved that.
Right, and then I came in, and the guys wanted to change it, go away from only gaming into to computers in general. What are computers doing? What can we make with computers? Things like that. It was the second big show I did as a writer. The host was Ute Welti, who is now at Deutschlandradio Kultur, I think, or Deutschlandradio. So we did show there, and then I started to write for several shows or several part of shows when it was coming to computer technique. So I think if you just jump to the end of Neues, which is a few years ago that they stopped the whole show, or to the end of Computer Club, it was a real good decision to end this now, because computers were spreading out so fast in every part of the world, of our living, that people stopped searching for computer shows. They were searching for solutions for their life. So it was a time in between when we did Neues. That was the reason why we did several different kind of shows on Neues. There was Anwenderkurs, there was Neues, the computer show, Neues, das Magazin, Neues aus Computerredaktion. So it was different shows we did with different focus points on the content. More technique, more usage, different focus points. But we did that because we found out that even on Neues we had problems to hold the audience, because some part of people always wanted to know about the new Windows or the new Office. There was another part of audience and viewers who weren't interested in it at all. They just were interested in CD-ROMs and how is that recipe CD-ROM for making, don't know, Schweinebraten or goulash or whatever. So, this was really funny. So we found out that our audience divided in different parts with different interests. So I think, and the other thing was that more and more magazines, first print magazines like Focus or Spiegel, were starting with the big stories on computers, because computers were more and more important. And so we were not alone anymore. There was a kind of different media talking about computers. So somehow we got we were obsolete, and it was correct. So if I think, would I now start a show about computers in TV? No, I would not, because I think time is over. It was a big time. We had one of the biggest successes at Dreisat, also on the quotes of the on the numbers of viewers we had. We were a big star at Dreisat with our shows, because we were higher than the normal Dreisat magazines were that days. But after a while, we were obsolete. People found different sources of information, magazines, the internet, all that stuff. And so if I decided to start with my new things like Christian guckt sich or Digisaurier, the magazine, and all that stuff, all those moving picture formats, not on TV, I decided with some kind of technique, with a good script and with good ideas, I decided to start it on YouTube and Facebook, because I think that is the way, that is the place to be. Because if you look at the new audience, they don't zap around on their TV set. They just look and watch on demand, and that's it. So if I have an offer to make, which has a demand in the audience, then they will find me. If not, I don't want to bother them in the way that I suddenly, after Tagesschau or after Heute Schnau, Christian Spanik pops up and says, "Hey guys, and now it's about computers, and you have to watch. It's 2015, and now you have to watch about computers." No, I never will do that. I think it's not fair.
So are you satisfied with the number of reaction and viewers you have with Digisaur on Facebook, and I think you also do Twitch, right?
No, we are not at Twitch at the moment. I don't know if we're going though. I mean, we started with the whole thing in January. So satisfied is a wide thing. Sure, I want to have more viewers. Sure, I will. After a while, I find out it's a long tail thing, and on the other hand, people have so much offers to watch at YouTube. I don't know. I think they will need time to find that. But after all, I have to say, on Digisaurier and on Intelligente Welt, we have really good numbers for that content we make, because we don't show cats. So if you want to watch a cat, don't watch Digisaurier or Intelligente Welt. We don't have cats. And we even don't give some schmink tips because it's not about schmink tips. So to be honest, the question is, how big can an audience be for the thing you're doing? And if you watch the numbers, you can see that things are working out very well. Some better, some more, some less. But you know that on your own channel, it depends on. But I have fun doing it. And I think that's the most important part.
Of course. And what's your opinion about Wolfgang Rudolph, who actually is doing Computer Club 2 on YouTube in the old way it was on television? He seems to be quite successful with it.
Yeah, I think there is a market. Or look at Georg Schnurer from CT. He has this Technikranch, right. A great format. I think, and that's the most important thing. In the years when I was at Neues or at the other shows, there were times where people didn't have a choice. There was not so much offer on computer content on the net or on whatever. So I think now everybody can pick out the thing he likes, because honestly, there were people who really loved WDR Computer Club and hated Neues. They loved Wolfgang Rudolph and Wolfgang Bach, and they hated Christian Spanik. I understand that. I mean, I'm not everybody's darling. I never was. Why should I? So it was completely okay if those guys watched Computer Club. And now, the good thing is, because of the on-demand situation, everybody can watch the way he wants to have a computer show, because there's quite plenty of offers what you can see. So just decide what's good, what you like. If you like more the TV way I do on Digisaurier, or if you like more thing which Wolfgang Rudolph and Wolfgang Bach did on WDR Computer Club 2 on YouTube, or the thing Georg Schnurer does on Technikranch, just decide what you want and you get it. And that's great.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So
you're very welcome.
That's exactly 45 minutes.
Oh, great. Great. So I can have dinner now.
Great. Yes. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to have the third part with you, where we actually talk about your Neues TV show on Dreisat.
Yeah, looking forward to that too. See you again. Bye, Jörg.
Yeah, bye.